my mind went back to the question that had been posed on that sunny autumn day in 1995 at the stately home of George Washington. Supposing the two of them were not there, who would you see as a successor? This is the story of June 12, 1993, featuring Abiola, General Sani Abacha, General Abdulsalam Abubakar. This is the story of democracy in Nigeria. This is a book that I wrote in 2009. It is an autobiography. The section that I'm reading relates to events that took place in 1995 in the United States of America. Events that formed the background to what then happened in Nigeria in 1998 concerning Abiola and Abacha. Follow me. I'd resolved to jump before my 35th birthday, even though I'd only been in legal practice proper since the age of 29, having spent so much of my time on the road to commercial law practice. Still, the jump could not be put off any longer, not least because of political developments back home in Nigeria. Nigeria's Afrobeat artist, Fela, had in his song, Teacher, Don't Teach Me Nonsense, highlighted some of the bad practices that the British colonial government had introduced to Nigerians. The worst, because it has carried the gravest and most enduring consequences, was the interference with the outcome of Nigeria's first democratic elections. General Ibrahim Babangida had overthrown the administration of General Buhari in a palace coup, and to buy the support of the Nigerian people, he had promised us freedom from Buhari's war against indiscipline. Little did we know that it was the road to anarchy that he was setting the country onto. Having, on 12th of June 1993, organized what is acclaimed to have been the freest and fairest elections in Nigeria's history, he decided to consult the instruction manual on how to override the express preference of the people of Nigeria, and then proceeded to summarily annul the results of the elections, for no other reason than because it produced the wrong winner, a southern Nigerian. The political stalemate between North and South that resulted from this new exercise in the perversion of democracy was a setting in which the ruthless General Sani Abacha, another army general from northern Nigeria, emerged from the shadows. When Chief Abiola, the winner of the election, insisted on his prize, Abacha promptly threw him into his dungeons, where he ultimately perished along with his mandates. When the protests of the playwright Ken Saro-Wiwa were calling too much global attention to the oil extractive operations in his native Ogoni land, Abacha had him hung. By this time, Nigerians were wishing that they had stayed on General Buhari's path towards a disciplined Nigeria. I found myself providing a running commentary on these events in my homeland to my colleagues at Lovells, the city law firm. It was getting harder and harder for me to reconcile my duty to my employers with my need to say what I wished to say on these developments in the way that I wanted to say it. Moreover, I felt a sense of guilt. Here I was, a product of Nigeria, a country on the bottom rungs of the development ladder, devoting the intellectual abilities that I had to the service of corporate Britain, a country that already enjoyed an embarrassment of riches in intellectual capital. Though I wasn't to blame for my country's predicament, I felt I had some responsibility to do whatever I was able to do to help lift it out of the mire. I had to carve some time out of the pursuit of a livelihood to make time for the work on the political front. The masters of the universe. It was earlier in 1995, while I was still at Lovells in body, although my spirit was somewhere down a runway towards my great adventure, when a chance encounter occurred on the London Underground. It was to give me a peep behind the curtains on the workings of democracy in Nigeria, and it was to give US law capability to Ogun Solicitors within its first year of operation. The Northern Line was once again living up to its reputation as the misery line. On my way to work that morning, I had already boarded the train at Finchley Central when the suspension of the service was suddenly announced, and we were directed off the line onto the bus service. It is on these occasions, when they have a shared grudge against the public transport service, that London commuters break their habit of not talking to each other. I got talking to a slightly lanky fellow with an Irish accent who had been sitting next to me on the train. I was pleased to learn that he worked in the commercial department of the US Embassy, and he was pleased to hear that I was a lawyer at Lovells. We exchanged details and agreed to arrange a luncheon with our principals. The venue was a partner's dining room at Lovells. He had invited his boss, Cantor Walsh, a commercial attaché at the embassy, and I had invited Philip Gershny, the partner who I considered to have the best interpersonal skills amongst the partners in the tax department. The high quality of the food matched the high quality of the discussion. When the discussions touched on the current political developments in Nigeria, I must have said something that caught Cantor Walsh's attention, because not long afterwards, he was putting me forward for his government's international visitor program. The program, he explained, was for those whom they considered were likely to have some kind of role in the countries in which the US government had an interest. The program, which was funded by USAID, involved an all-expenses-paid trip to the United States of America for up to 4 weeks. The deal was simple enough. The US government will fly me to up to 6 states, New York and Washington being mandatory as a power base of the government, with the rest being of my choosing. At each location, they would arrange meetings with anyone I wished to meet. The quid pro quo was that I would make myself available for anyone they wanted me to meet. It sounded a fair enough deal to me, and so off I went in the autumn of 1995 to New York, to Washington, and to Seattle, Boston, Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Charlotte, North Carolina. In New York, I met the US counterparts of the Law Society and the Bar Council, where we discussed legal education, and I was taken to the United Nations headquarters. In Washington, I was taken to the US Supreme Court, where I posed for photos in a high-backed leather seat of the top judges in the US. I found the courtroom much more congenial than the committee room at the House of Lords that served as the courtroom for the law lords in England. The name of each justice being written on the back of each justice's chair, I chose the chair of Justice Clarence Thomas, the sole black member of the Supreme Court. I was glad that it was only his chair that I met and not him, because I was later to learn that our political philosophy could not have been more different. Even so, that a full black like me had a seat in the highest court in the land in America did reinforce my view that it was the traditions of England and not the ability of black lawyers in England that accounted for the absence of a pure black judge, even at the level of the high courts in England. Washington was also where I came face to face with the masters of the universe. Donald Eason had been the US ambassador to Nigeria in the mid-1970s. At the time, General Olusegun Obasanjo first came to power in Nigeria on the back of the assassination of General Murtala Mohammed. Eason had since retired to devote his spare time to charitable work in West Africa, in the area of river blindness, while Obasanjo had retired to his farm as a chicken farmer. Both, however, remained in contact through the Ford Foundation. Donald Eason was one of those who had expressed an interest in meeting me. He turned up at my Washington hotel at the pre-appointed time in his cream-colored linen suit and crisp white shirt, and took me on a tour of the stately home of George Washington, America's first president. As the two of us strolled in the grounds of the former home of the great American president on this sunny autumn day in 1995, he pointed out, as if by way of confession, that George Washington had owned slaves, and it was believed that he had fathered a child with one of his domestic slaves. Quite how the conversation moved across to Nigeria, I cannot recall, but when it got there, I remember him asking, "What do you think of Abacha's self-succession plans? Do you think he'll get away with it?" The new vogue for the masters of the universe was that military dictators were out, but military dictators who were ready to leave their uniforms at home were in. The formula had been successfully tested in Ghana with Flight Lieutenant Jerry Rawlings, and will be used later in Uganda with General Museveni, and in Pakistan with General Musharraf. In preparation for his own metamorphosis, Sani Abacha had, by military decree, promulgated a new constitution that permitted 5 political parties to contest the presidential elections, and had got all 5 parties to adopt him as their sole candidate for the presidency. "I can't see it working," was my reply to Donald Eason. I elaborated that as a military dictator, Abacha could very much do as he pleased, but that once he took the uniform off and held himself out as a civilian democratic ruler, he would be hounded by the world media over the continued detention of Chief Abiola, the winner of the elections that Abacha's military predecessor, General Babangida, had aborted. I added that I could not see him releasing Abiola to avoid this problem because Abiola would insist on his mandate. And at the same time, I could not see Abiola accepting to leave his dungeon without his mandate. A hard divide had formed, with Abacha being seen as the flag bearer of the North and Abiola being seen as a champion of the South. In these circumstances, I said, I cannot see a soft landing. Supposing the two of them weren't there, was the follow-up comment. Who would you see as a possible successor? The import of this casual hypothesis was lost on me at the time. I proceeded to explain that given the seriousness of the standoff between North and South, I could not see a direct return to one-man, one-vote democracy. I speculated that there would have to be some form of transitional government, possibly a government of national unity. I proceeded to throw out some names from the different competing power sectors in Nigeria, that could be pulled together to form such a government. The one name that I did not mention was the one that the masters of the universe had in mind, General Olusegun Obasanjo, the former military ruler turned chicken farmer. What about Obasanjo? He said. What do you think of him? I began offering my apologies for the fact that I didn't have much knowledge of the man. He had been a military ruler from 1976 to 1979, following the assassination of his boss, General Murtala Mohammed, at a time when I was a political ignoramus. I explained that from what I had heard, he had run a relatively clean administration, and by nationalising British petroleum in the face of protests from the British government, he had shown he wasn't afraid of taking on the West. I added that with him being a former military ruler, he would be able to control the army so as to contain the risk of military coups, and being at the same time a southerner and a Yoruba man, like Abiola, his presidency would probably serve to appease the bitter sense of injury amongst southerners. I speculated that with the North having accepted him as supreme military ruler before, they may not be adverse to him as a compromise candidate. Yes, now you mention it, I can see him being able to hold the fort, I concluded. Then the conversation moved away from Nigeria. This trip was an important contribution to my realization that I had some role to play, however marginal, in the political affairs of Nigeria, and to my conviction that that role was not compatible with my duties as a city lawyer. I never saw Donald Eason or Cantwell Walsh again, but what I did see was that about 3 years after this discussion, on 8th of June 1998, to be exact, Sani Abacha died suddenly. It was said that he died of a heart attack. Then, just as everybody in Nigeria, at least everybody in the southern parts of Nigeria, and indeed many in the north, were jubilantly expecting Chief Abiola to be pardoned, released, and installed as the duly elected president of Nigeria, on 7th of July 1998, exactly a month to the day of Abacha's death, the news broke that Abiola had also died of a heart attack. The news was broken by a former US ambassador to Nigeria, Thomas Pickering, who was leading a US delegation, including Susanna Rice, to meet with the new military leadership to lobby for Abiola's release. It was explained that he suffered the seizure while he was having tea with the delegation. Even as Bill Clinton, the then honorary black president of the United States, took to the airwaves to reassure Nigerians that there had been no foul play, my mind went back to the question that had been posed on that sunny autumn day in 1995 at the stately home of George Washington. Supposing the two of them were not there, who would you see as a successor? The picture that was emerging in my mind became fully formed when General Olusegun Obasanjo, the man that I had not initially given a thought to until Mr. Eason mentioned his name, was sworn in as President of Nigeria a year later in May 1999. Written in 2009 concerning events in America in the autumn of 1995, 3 years before Abiola and Abacha died in 1998. You're now going to hear from Baba Gana Kingibe, who was Abiola's running mate in that aborted election. And you also hear the account of General Abdusalami Abubakar. You decide.
Now, Chief MKO Abiola never really told me the details of their discussions. But from what I've gathered, that is the kind of impression that he was given. So he was very enthusiastic. He welcomed the coup of General Abacha. If you remember, he went to congratulate him. And one of the difficulties I had in managing things at that point in time is that I remember I had given Bola Tinubu an appointment to see me in the house. And he then phoned to say MKO Abiola had just asked him to come over. Could we put the appointment for a later time? I said, fine. It was only then later to see on the television screen that MKO Abiola had asked Bola Tinubu to come and accompany him to see and congratulate General Abacha. MKO Abiola never discussed with me, never told me whether it was a good idea to do that. He had several meetings with the British ambassador, the American ambassador, and the British High Commissioner, the American ambassador, and others. Really, he never discussed the content of these conversations. So I wasn't clear. But the broad outline one got was that he too, like everybody else, was outmaneuvered by General Abacha. But be that as it may, I always insisted that he, MKO Abiola, or he and I, did not take decisions alone.
So can you relive for us the day Abacha died and the drama around how you became the head of state?
Quite honestly, the day General Abacha passed away, yes, a lot has happened. He died, I think, the day he was to travel to Togo for the ECOWAS, I think ECOWAS or AU summit in Togo. Now, I got a call from the villa that General Abacha wants to see me. So immediately what came to my mind, I said, I hope he has not changed his mind about going to this Togo and he's going to send me. Because at that time, when he passed away, already I was de facto number 2 man. Because at that time, General Dia and others were having problem on this alleged coup. So I said, now I'm sure the general has changed his mind and he is going to send me, because in a lot of time, I'm called upon to go and represent the head of state. So I took my time. When I went to the bathroom, and I told my wife, look, I think I might be going to this AU summit. So help me prepare my... Then before I finished, then there was another call.
This was in the morning?
In the morning?
He died? Yes.
In the morning. Then there was another call. Look, the president is waiting for you. I said, okay, I'm coming. So, casually I put on my tracksuit, since there is no time to dress up in uniform and so on, since there was agitation that I wanted immediately. So I came with my tracksuit. I think I was even wearing the slippers. So I came, so as I was coming, they said, the general is in the office. So naturally, when I come to the office, no matter who is with General Abacha, I normally just go in and meet him, and maybe he will say, okay, wait, let me finish with this gentleman. Or he will ask the fellow to give us chance. To my surprise, when I came, as I was climbing the steps, somebody said, no, he said you have to wait in the waiting room. So to my surprise, I was in the waiting room for over 30, 40 minutes. Then I kept wondering, what is happening? Anytime I want to go up, they said, no, they said the general said I should wait. So after about 30 minutes to 40 minutes waiting, then late Kumasi, Ahmadu Kumasi, who was the Inspector General of
Ibrahim Kumasi,
who was the Inspector General of Police, came to where I was sitting. He said, please come. So instead of going up to the office, we followed out. He said, no, we are going to the house. Then indeed he was in the process. He told me, look, unfortunately, General Abacha has passed out in the night. So that's how we went into the villa where General Abacha is living. And as we enter, they showed me on the right where his corpse was. So I entered and prayed for his soul and so on. Then we entered the parlor where I found some gentlemen, including, I think, Kumasi, of course, was there. Then the chief of the Chief Justice of the Federation, I think Ambassador Babagana Kingibe, and one or two security operatives. I can't remember everybody. And that's how we met them.
Was it clear this was just natural death? Because as you know, there is all sorts of speculation.
Well, at that time, I was told he passed away and so on. At that time, all this speculation and so on and so forth did not arise until later on. All we are concerned was that, okay, the head of state has passed away. How do we now break the news to the country, and so on and so forth? So we were guided by the then Chief Justice of the Federation, saying that, look, yes, as much as there need to attend to inform Nigerians about the passing away of the head of state, you cannot leave a vacuum. There must be a substantive head of state before you can go ahead with other things. So I think that set up the chain of events. So immediately, the Chief of Defense Staff, then I quickly summoned for the Council of State meeting.
You are also there when another dramatic death happened, that is of MKO Abiola.
Right.
I don't know. There are still people who say funny things happen, but can you really lay the cards on the table?
Well,
what you know.
I smile because there are a lot of allegations here and there that we killed Abiola. Well, let me, as always, when I'm talking about late Abiola, I still thank my God for directing me on things to do when he gave me that leadership of this country. On the day Moshood passed away, may he rest in peace. 2, 3 things makes me always say I thank my God for the guidance he gave me. One was I received a delegation from America headed by Pickering, who was then the Secretary of State or so on. In his team, I remember very well, Susan Wright was member of that team. I remember her very well because of the role she played later. So after the normal courtesy and discussion we had, when they were leaving my office, Pickering said, Your Excellency, we made a request to see Moshood Abiola, but we were denied. So I said, why were you denied? Who denied you? Then I made a decision. I said, look, you will see Moshood, definitely. I overruled whoever said you will not see him. So I now called my chief security officer. I said, please make arrangement for this team to see Abiola. Can you arrange a meeting place for them? That is one point. Now, during the castration of Moshood Abiola, except his doctor, personal doctor, to my knowledge, no member of his family saw him. So when I became head of state, based on consultation and interaction, together with Ambassador Babagana Kingibe, I said, look, the family, I gave them a date, they can come and see Abiola, they can come and see. So please liaise with my team so that they can come and see Abiola. So a day before he died, his family came to Abuja to see him. For one reason or the other, the whole family could not see him at the same time. So it was agreed, when this group, his family will see him today. Tomorrow, the next team will see him. So remember, so they saw him like yesterday. Now, this team from US came to see me, and I said they could see him. Normally, it is in the evenings the family go and see him. So because I have authorized the American team to see him, so the other part of the family were waiting to see him. So it was at this meeting when the American team was meeting Abiola, he fell sick. And suddenly the security officers called the medical team to come and attend to him. When they saw the situation, they said, okay, this thing is, let's take him to the medical center. So it was the medical team plus the American team that took him to the medical center. Unfortunately, at the medical center, he gave up. Then my security chief called me, sir, bad news for you. I said, what else? He said, Abiola is dead. I said, what? So I said, okay. And he told me he was there with the American team. At that time, I was staying in the barracks. I have not moved to the villa. So I said, okay, let him take the American team to my house. I will meet them in the. So I closed from the office and went there. Now, the issue now, how do I break the news to Abiola's family? And now, how do we tell the world Abiola has passed away? So I think I must be thankful to God and again to Ambassador Kingibe because we called on him and he now came there and I asked him to bring the family of Abiola. So when they came, I broke the news that unfortunately this is what has happened. As you will expect, the family broke down, they started crying. I can't remember which of the ladies, I held her. She was crying, sobbing. It was then Susan Wright. That's why I always remember, she said, Mr. President, that is not your job, let me do it. So she now held this lady and until she settled down, she calmed down a little bit. And then we have to summon my second in command and other people. And then we now strategize how to break the news. That's why I always I thank my God for guiding me. If I hadn't said the American team should go and meet Abiola, certainly I don't know how I will explain to the world that Abiola has died. And the American team, will they believe me that we had not killed Abiola at that time when they were requesting to see him? So again, I always thank her.
And they've explained it themselves independently,
Right.
Susan Rice and the other people.
My mind went back to the question that had been posed on that sunny autumn day in 1995 at the stately home of George Washington. Supposing the two of them were not there, who would you see as a successor?
Yet, we ended all Obasanjo. The whole process and produced another general as president. And people keep saying that you generals actually found a way to organize this transition. He was imprisoned, I think in Yola or somewhere. Or somehow he was brought out, dressed up as a civilian candidate and became president. There is this belief that this is all arranged by the leading generals of the period.
Thank you for asking that question. I always smile and laugh when I am accused or my government is accused of imposing Obasanjo. Now, of course, we release Obasanjo with other prisoners and pardon them. So when Obasanjo was released, he came to see me, saying he was going to take the government to court. Why are you going to do that? Of course, he said his business was has been crumbled by the military. His human rights have been violated. He did not commit any coup, and so on and so forth. I said, sir, please, let bygones be bygones. Thank God you are alive today. Forget about this thing. Some of the issues you mentioned within my power, I will look into that. So we left it at that. Then the next visit, he came to see me to tell me a group of people, a political party, because at that time, you know, things were going concurrently.
Yes.
We registered political parties and a lot of joking was going around. So he came to tell me he has been approached by this group of people. They want to make him a candidate to stand for election. I said, sir, if I were you, please disregard these people. So go home and rest and sort yourself out and so on and so forth. He said, okay, General, thank you for your advice. I will get back to you. He never got back to me. The next I hear was that he was one of the presidential candidates. I try to tell people that I have nothing to do with bringing Obasanjo to contest the election. Whatever must happen is between the political parties and so on.
But you helped to rehabilitate him after prison.
Like I help all other prisoners. What do you mean by I help to rehabilitate?
Well, I'm thinking of his businesses, whether he was helped with something to revive them, which is one of his complaints.
Of course, not only him. All people that were in prison in one way or the other, we try to rehabilitate them, to have them in one way or the other. Like any other prisoner, the military people will release. In one way or the other, we did what we could to assist them. So you cannot equate that as bringing him to contest for an election.
Yeah, but also, I mean, close allies of yours, General Babangida, General Gusau, seem to have been involved in this PDP arrangement. And that's why it is assumed you will be in the know, probably help here and there with the situation.
Of course, I know the registration of the political parties. Of course, we have to intervene in one way or the other in order to bring peace, to give peace a chance. We put some conditions for the registration of political parties. In order to make peace reign, we have to, let me use the word tinker with some of the conditions, because categorically the AD did not qualify. It was only, I think, is it PDP or
ANPP.
ANPP qualified to be registered as political parties.
Yeah.
But if we have done that, we are still not out of the woods. There was this agitation from the Southwest that, look, they have been shortchanged and so on and so forth. So we said, look, all we are trying to do is to bring peace. No laws are sacrosanct. Let's see how we can tinker. So we tinkered and allowed the AD to be registered. And thereby we were able to placate another area where there will be unrest and accusation. So we did. Now, if in the process of making political parties, people are joking here and there, please take my administration out of this tinkering. We didn't know anything. We did not say, look, make ABC a presidential candidate. It is an issue between the political parties. If, as you said, Babangida, Aliyu Gusau have played a role, that must be a role they are playing with the political parties, because they became members of political party.
My mind went back to the question that had been posed on that sunny autumn day in 1995 at the stately home of George Washington. Supposing the two of them were not there, who would you see as a successor? The picture that was emerging in my mind became fully formed when General Olusegun Obasanjo, the man that I had not initially given a thought to, until Mr. Easom mentioned his name, was sworn in as President of Nigeria a year later in May 1999.